don't watch porn, it damages your brain. I've just done a very large study on porn addiction. Everything I do is measurable. Vast majority of men consume pornography regularly. Many of them don't share that with their partner. And their brain is already trained for lack of intimacy. This is about dopamine that got linked to sexuality. This isn't about sex. You're medicating with porn. Sexuality is healthy. Evolutionarily, we need it. But usually, the man has to come down out of hypersexuality.
You mentioned last time when we had our first conversation that the brain deteriorates, permanent damages, or not permanent.
6 months. That's how long it takes to unwire, rewire, and begin to hardwire in that new optimized pattern. And again, you see it all in the data. You can see where you started, where you are on any given day, and how far away you are from the optimal pattern.
Welcome to 60 Minutes with a Woman, and thank you for joining us today. We are going to dive into the reality of porn addiction, how it affects the brain, how it affects relationships, and why so many people don't know it's affecting them until it's too late. And our special guest is Trish Leigh. Welcome, Trish.
Hello, thank you for having me. I am really eager to dive in to share what I know about explicit content, about the algorithm, which I always say is not neutral, and to be able to share with people how it's impacting their focus, their energy, and honestly, most importantly, their relationships.
It's a very taboo topic, and I was very excited to have you here today. And you are the perfect person to speak on that subject. And I'm going to share a little more about your background with the listeners.
Sure. Yeah,
Trish, you are known for your work on hypersexuality, dopamine regulation, and a recovery from betrayal trauma. In simple terms, you help people break free from porn addiction and compulsive sexual patterns. Beyond the simple terms, you run a virtual neurofeedback coaching clinic and a proven program that helps people rebuild healthy real-life pleasure, shifting away from explicit content and screen-based stimulation. Trish, you help both women and men understand how hypersexuality is linked to dopamine and how this constant need of fast pleasure can impact their lives far beyond the addiction itself. Through your hijacker framework and QEEG brain mapping, you reveal what's really happening beneath the compulsive sexual behavior. Today, we're going to explore the topics that affect deeply people's lives, such as how much masturbation is too much, why real-life intimacy can feel different when someone is addicted to porn, while male performance can be impacted, and how this shows up in life, in marriage, and in relationships.
Yeah, get a cup of coffee, buckle up.
There you go.
We've got a lot to dive into, and I really am eager for people to understand what's going on underneath all of it. And you know, just to start off the conversation, I would love to just let people know that, you know, over the amount of time I've been doing this, I have spoken privately with thousands of people. And the reason that's important is I've heard the stories that people have not told anybody else. My framework is different because of that. Yeah. And that allows me to share those stories anonymously, of course, with others who are going through the same thing. So, you know, this is a safe space to discuss things that are tricky.
Yes, yes. Tell us more about how you decided. So who you are, what is your background, and what made you decide to take on that journey?
Sure. I was going to say that introduction it's a lot, right? So I'm going to simplify it because it really is a lot. My life has been, founded in complexity and trying to make the complex simple. So I'm a cognitive neuroscientist. I also am the mother of 5 precious children, as I call them. I have a stepson also. So I've raised 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. That is important because everything I'm about to tell you, I live and breathe every single day through co-regulating my children. I've been married for 24 years, which comes with all the seasons. I'm sure some of your listeners can appreciate that. I've been moving through those seasons and getting stronger and more authentic in my own self through every easier one and more challenging one. And I'm happy to share the ones that aren't in the vault, if you know what I mean. In my work as a neuroscientist, everything I do is measurable. And I want to slow down there for a minute because that is different than most practitioners. A QEEG brain map means quantitative. Quantitative means truly measurable in a way that no other people really can do. EEG is electroencephalogram. So long story short, I can read how people's brains are performing. I also dive into the science behind all of this, and I complete scientific studies. I've just done a very large study on porn addiction and how it can contribute to sexual arousal dysfunction. All of my work is measurable. I use top tier technology that essentially rewires the brain. So when people have tried to step away from porn or tried to heal ED or sexual arousal dysfunction with their mind and their body, and they haven't succeeded, the missing piece is this top tier technology that thankfully I'm at the forefront of. So that kind of encapsulates, I think, just about everything. I have a book out. It's called Mind Over Explicit Matter. That is such a beautiful story. I have a very active YouTube channel. There's thousands of videos. I've been supporting people since I found out about the damages of porn addiction for almost a decade through free content every single week. But a literary agent heard one of my videos, reached out, and he said, have you ever thought about, writing a book? And I'm like, as a matter of fact, I have one basically written, and I was offered a contract through HarperCollins. So now I am one of the leading authors in this space, basically picking up where Gary Wilson, who wrote Your Brain on Porn, which is the foundational book, he passed, and I kind of entered the scene simultaneously and probably serendipitously, and kind of have led the charge since then.
When you decided to take on that journey, did you feel that there was a sense of maybe it was misunderstood by your surrounding, your environment, people around you? And what made you want to continue?
So on my Google Drive, I still have the folder that says Passion Project. This is a true story, because when I found out about this, which I'm happy to share, I didn't tell anybody. And, I'm thinking to myself in retrospect too, think about that. I have shame telling people this is going to be something I'm working on, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't even personally impacting me, but I started this folder that was called Passion Project, and I started working on it by myself. And then what happened is I've always had a YouTube channel about brain stuff, and it would have like 300 views, and I was all excited about it. Don't get me wrong. I loved it. I still love it. But then when I found out about porn, I made this video. It's 2 minutes and I think 16 seconds long. It honestly says nothing neuroscientific. It just says, don't watch porn. It damages your brain. I uploaded it to a different blank channel. And a few months later, I get a notification. Your video's been viewed millions of times.
Wow.
And I'm like, what video? Wow. I go into the brain ones, 300, 279. Then I'm like, OMG, it is the porn video. I go over onto that channel and check this out. There are many, many comments from those early subscribers that I attribute all of this to, honestly, asking me for more content, thanking me for making the video, wanting me to share what I knew. And so I was already highly trained, but then I trained under the leading sex addiction mentors in the world that I could find. I trained for years. I still train, honestly, because that's how I am. But I started making consistent content at that point. But check this out. I said to my husband, I'm into something and I'm pretty sure you're not going to like it. Do you want me to tell you? And he knows he'd try to shut me down, which I would have had to continue to gain the strength. But he's like, no, I don't want to know. And that was like in, I think, September or October. But New Year's Eve, I told him, because by then it had gained traction. I'm like, I can't go into another year because I'm not one to keep secrets at all. I told him I had this thing, but so I told him on New Year's Eve and he was like, you're go for it. You're already in deep at this point. And I really felt like my work accumulated in that moment, because it's really interesting. And I'm sure you and your listeners have had these moments too. I loved my work before that, and I can tell you what it was, but I always felt a little discontented. I felt like I wasn't fully on purpose. And when the porn thing fell in my lap, I literally sat in those blue chairs behind me and I thought, am I doing this? But I had this feeling from the inside out, like, this is it. This is how I can make the biggest impact in the world. And that's when I doubled down.
Listen, you're not even speaking only from passion, but there is a real issue that you have uncovered. That was one of the reasons why I reached out to you. I really wanted to bring this topic to light. I want people to be able to feel comfortable around it. And I realize that you're the perfect teacher for it. So
thank you.
let's now that we understand where you're coming from was this passion, let's get into understanding a little more what porn addiction is. I want to ask you, why do you think people are still uncomfortable when it comes to sexuality, even though it's a natural part of everyone's life?
Yeah, it's interesting because generationally, this is different. Like people who are middle-aged and older, they're very uncomfortable with sexuality. Unfortunately, most of the younger generation has become very hypersexual. So I do think we have a little bit of a great divide there. And it goes back to like, you know, where we learned, right? So if you're middle-aged and older, you learned from your parents who had a lot of shame around sexuality. I know my parents, my sister and I still joke about it. There was an Oprah Winfrey episode, Oprah, you know, and it was something about sex. And then the only thing my parents ever said, my mom's like, did you see that? Like that was our sex talk. Did you see what Oprah said? We weren't even watching it. And my sister and I like, that is just insane that like there's zero conversation about it. Yeah. So, you know, the greatest gift of me pivoting into porn addiction is I openly talk with my children about healthy sexuality and unhealthy sexuality. So I do think it's our teachers, right? So our parents were our teachers. For many people, it's the community, their educators, their churches, and there's a lot of shame there. The younger generation, you know, where they're learning about sexuality. They're learning from porn proper. They're learning from social media platforms that are completely hypersexualized. So it's our teachers who taught us, and that's why we have our framework. But just one more thing before I throw it back to you. That's why I think it's our job, all of us, no matter how old you are, no matter your gender, it's to teach yourself to have healthy sexuality. I use the word healthy. I don't use good or bad, right? Sexuality is healthy. Evolutionarily, we need it. So, right? No sex, no procreation, no lineage, no continuing of the human race. So when we embrace it as a natural, healthy part of life, then there's no shame, right? But it is about doing it in a healthy way, because I often will make an analogy of sexuality with eating or eating disorders, because if you overeat or you undereat, you have a lot of shame around that. But if you learn how to eat in a healthy way, eating's a part of life and people don't have shame about it.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, it sounds like what you just said made me think of the fact that we went from a place of shame with little availability around sex, right, to objectifying the actual act. And there is a gap in the middle. And I think this is where we have a missing link and where addiction really took place for people. And you've grown massively online through your YouTube channel. Do you see it as a tangible proof that more people are in need of help and support in this area?
Yeah. And, you know, without my anecdotal experience, science shows that there's drastic need. But I would love to share it with you anecdotally, is that we know through social media that many people are engaging in what are called parasocial relationships. They're transactional relationships, and they generally have to do with hypersexuality, right? You get a thumbs up because you're wearing less and less clothes, or people are messaging people sexual messages. Like, this is pervasive now. So science shows this, that identity fragmentation is happening, because going back to what we said, our identities used to be formulated from within the things that we innately, you know, were drawn to in the real world. But now people are spending more time on their phones and screens, and they don't even participate or engage in the real world at all sometimes, or especially to the level that they could in a healthy way. So going back to the pleasure pathways and the reward circuitry in the brain, it's becoming linked to the highest levels of dopamine that person is finding within their screen, instead of being linked to their employment or their vocation, to their relationships in the real world, and their hobbies, avocation. That's healthy development of identity. So we know scientifically and anecdotally, this is fragmenting people from the inside out. But I just wanted to share one thing about what we were talking about before, generationally, younger people and older people, with your comment of objectification, that younger people men are learning to objectify women. Women are learning to be self-objectified. That is one very big difference. Generationally, middle-aged or older women, they actually have been trained to be hyposexual. And this goes back to like the programming that I was talking about. Men learn to be hypersexual and hide it. Women learn to be hyposexual, like my parents, like with all of us, right? There's no talking about sex. There's no thinking about sex, and you better not contemplate enjoying sex, right? Hyposexual. So I contend a lot of women, especially, if they're my age or a little bit older, they have to learn what healthy sexuality is, bringing up their hyposexuality when their partners bring down their hypersexuality, and then they meet in the middle for healthy sexuality.
Absolutely. You're so right. And this reminds me of a podcast I listened to about 10 years ago. And they were talking about how in a movie, and don't call me out on the title, but it was Robert De Niro. And he was saying, they were speaking about an oral act of sex was a hooker. And basically what happened is, somebody asked him, why don't you ask your wife to do it? And he said, are you crazy? This is the mouth that kisses my children. Mm-hmm. And we went from that to having this availability, and it has become the norm. We are supposed to be subjected to these kind of acts because it's part of it. So once again, I think there was like we weren't sure exactly where performing and love was still a togetherness kind of action versus
intimacy,
something
right?
very sexual. Yeah,
right.
Highly sexual.
And, this comes from pornified or hypersexualized content, because in hypersexualized and porn proper, which just to frame that also, we know scientifically and anecdotally, vast majority of men consume pornography regularly. Many of them don't share that with their partner, and they've been consuming since adolescence or earlier. So they're watching content that basically trains their brain to want all of these objectified acts. And again, I've talked to thousands of them. They don't mean to. They don't wake up to that until a decade, 2 decades later, and their brain is already trained for lack of intimacy. And if you think about it in porn proper, and like I said to you, I'm happy to share some of my experiences, which I think they make me stronger. So. But, my youngest daughter's 15. So what happened beginning of the school year, so maybe like 6 months ago, is she was out at a party with her friends and she found this boy cute. Right?
Yes.
So she gives this boy a look, like just gives him a look like, okay, I'm interested in you. Then this kid sexually assaults her, basically, comes over. She thinks he's coming over to talk. He comes over, grabs her in all kinds of places, forces himself on her. Thankfully, we have the relationship that she told me. She was kind of scared to tell me, because I'm still her parent. And of course, then, old me would have honestly probably blamed her for putting herself in that context. But what kid does this? A kid who's been trained that in porn proper, in all the scenarios, what happens is, the girl in the clothing room when you're trying on clothes gives you a look, and then you're having sex with her in the dressing room. Yeah. That's the scripts. So when kids and then young men learn these scripts, a look like that signifies let's go have sex, not I want to get to know you more. Yeah. And unfortunately, this is coloring, the sexuality, especially of younger people, but it's affecting men everywhere. It's tied to sexual assault. One way women can know in their own relationship is does your partner try to do something, I'll just say funky, but that you might not be into, something that's higher level dopamine seeking. And I want to bring us back to the fact that this has nothing to do with sex. I didn't say that clearly. I want to say it really, really clearly. This isn't about sex. This is about what the dopamine got linked to in that person's brain, which is hypersexuality, any given act, any given, or a variety of them. So like if your partner tries to do something out of the blue that you didn't see coming and you're like, I don't want to do that, because most of them are not acts that an emotionally intelligent woman would want to do. And I'll just give you one example, choking. Scientifically, we know choking's the newest thing. It has been for like 5 years. So there's young men are many of them are getting in trouble for choking their partner. Women are being asphyxiated on accident during sex because it's very dopamine producing, and these men have watched it.
That's horrible.
It's truly horrible.
I wasn't aware
no
of
emotionally
that.
intelligent person wants to be choked, right? But that becomes a dopamine driver for the person because it's like, I call it the friction point, where most pornography is very violent against women. So the friction point is like, there's actually more neurotransmitter and hormones being produced when it's this point between pleasure and anxiety. So that becomes a really big driver. The intensity as it amplifies is what it's usually men, but is what the person will then seek for. And, then usually the acts get more violent because of that friction point.
What is the healthy line between a kink and the actual act that you just described?
Like, I actually believe that what happens in a couple's bedroom is between them, right? I do believe that. I always say, let your freak flag fly as long as both people are enjoying it. But I do want you to be aware that those can be unhealthy acts, because you can have two alcoholics that go out and drink every night. They're having a blast, but they're alcoholics, right? If they're going out having 5 vodka cranberries every night, like, that's an issue. Like, that's not a healthy drinking pattern, but they're having a good time together. So where that line is, it's really like, and I'm going to say, this is probably the boldest thing I'm going to say in our conversation. It's about communication. People don't communicate. It's terrifying to them. I said, if you're willing to have sex with a person, you need to be able to communicate to them about sex. Most partners, especially like we indicated, if you're more hyposexual and you're maybe a little bit on the, middle age to older, you're not taught to talk about this. So what I would ask your listeners to think about, and you too, is, is it something you want to do? Do you actually enjoy it? Or are you, allowing your partner to do it because you know how much they enjoy it, but you don't like it and you don't want to engage in it? That takes a lot of courage to step back and really think about those things, and then have the courage to communicate it to your partner. Like, no, I don't want to do that. That doesn't make me feel good. I don't enjoy it. It actually, breaks this act down for me a little bit. So, that's really the line. And that line might change over time too.
Right. This is what I was going to say, because for a woman, sometimes, a woman doesn't consume porn as much as a man. Men have a lot more fantasies linked to things that are out of norm. And there is this need to please your partner, I think, in a woman, and the feeling of being disposable if you don't.
Yes. And the true beauty, and I have walked this walk too, the true beauty of it is when you set a boundary, a healthy boundary like that, and if your partner can see you, and that's a big if, and we could talk about that, because, if your partner can't see you, it's not like you leave him, you work on it. You don't stop talking about it until it gets resolved. That's the communication piece. But if you can do that, and you're seen, and your partner can step into it and respect your boundary, your relationship actually grows. That's why most of the people that I work with, they truly end up with a much better sex life than they started with. Because when they started, they were on different pages, and nobody really fully was aware of what was going on, nor could they communicate their healthy needs. Because if a man's watching porn, you already said it, he has a lot of sexual fantasies. And again, I contend you, where do you get those fantasies? Those seeds were planted. If they're not within the realm of healthy intimacy that's been practiced, where do these seeds get planted? So I work with men to help them understand what sexual acts, I call it the happiness trifecta. And all of this is in my book, by the way. The happiness trifecta is you're getting dopamine, so you feel pleasure, but you're also getting more serotonin for joy and engagement, and oxytocin for connection. If a man is in a hypersexual mode, he will be driven to try to get the highest level of dopamine, even within the sexual act with his partner. And a lot of men recognize this once they see the light when we're working together. They'll be like, oh, that's why I'm doing that thing. Yeah, you're chasing down the most dopamine, and you're using your partner to do it. The partners are aware of that, but they can't put that language to it. But they're like, what is this? Like, the sexual act's no longer about happiness trifecta at the same level together. It's about the man trying to get the most dopamine, which brings you out of the happiness trifecta. And then women become more hyposexual, not because they don't like sex, because they don't like that sex. That's why when we start thinking about it and we start communicating about it, we can get the sexual relationships that we want. But usually the man has to come down out of hypersexuality. The woman has to figure out what she likes, communicate that, and get on the same page, many times out of either hyposexuality or self-objectification or both.
There is also this article that I was reading, and it was mentioning that the lack was pornography, the lack of oxytocin, and the lack of human connection is leaving men empty. They feel sad inside.
Mm-hmm.
They're not fulfilled. Mm-hmm. So they have to go back to watching porn again because this efficiency of getting fast satisfaction mm-hmm. is just constant. And you wire your brain saying, oh, you want more of that because you don't know how else to get it. So it's a mm-hmm. real trap.
Yeah, it is a trap. And that's what I tell people all the time, that porn caused the feelings that you're medicating with porn. That's the loop, right?
Oh, right. Yeah,
and you just said it like, so I talk about these two brain patterns that I can see with my own eyes, and I show my clients with their own eyes in EEG. Is the first pattern I call strained brain. It's a wired and tired brain. So you feel stressed and you feel exhausted. You feel empty, like you said. That drives you for self-soothing, right? If you feel stressed, you need to soothe and bring those feelings down. And if you're exhausted, you're tired, it's self-stimulation. And that was my point about the friction point. In porn, it's very good at doing that very quickly. Easy button, instant gratification, no work involved, right? And if you have a partner, there's usually work involved, right? So this way, it's easy, fast dopamine. But that strained brain, after they consume pornography, leads them to what I call drained brain. They feel it's because of the dopamine flood. So dopamine floods the system at very high levels. I should digress for 1 second. Porn and hypersexual content is considered a supernormal stimuli. Supernormal means that it produces higher levels of dopamine in the system than any natural or healthy act ever could. So let's just say porn's a level 20 and sex with a partner on a good day is a 9. On a rough day, sex with your partner is a 4, right? Right? You're tired. So anyways, the gap from porn to healthy sexuality on a great day is an 11-point gap. So all that dopamine that floods the system is much higher, level 20, not 9. And what it does is it desensitizes the dopamine receptors in the brain, basically creating dysfunction in the reward center and the reward pathways, the pleasure pathways, as I call it. And that creates what I call drained brain. So then the men feel numb, unmotivated, slightly depressed. This is why mood swings so much, like wired and tired, kind of manic, then depressed. It's very similar to a drug addiction in the neural mechanisms. This is a behavioral addiction. And I actually think it's worse because there's no substance needed. And you already said it. It can be internalized. So one of my clients, he put it like this. He's like, if you put a drug addict and an alcoholic and me in a room for 30 days, they come out sober. I come out the same because it's internalized.
That is very scary.
It is. So, that's why. So strained brain leads to the need for drain brain. Drain brain leads to the need for strained brain. And you've got this dopamine cycle going.
We are going to dive into numbers a little bit because we now realize how pornography can be insidious in your life. 42% of women and 91.5% of men watch pornography. Only 11% of men and 3% of women admitted to be addicted to pornography. What do you think about these numbers?
Well, I agree. I think the woman number is probably inflated at this point, or inflated's the wrong word, but the urgency between men and women, like that's still 50% higher, it's still double. Yeah. But women are, and I wrote about this in my book too, just so you know, women are really more into like erotica and like escapism for that aspect of the sexual fantasy, which actually includes some of the intimacy pieces where men consume pornography more often. So like if we have women and men, for the vast majority of men, this quote unquote habit or compulsion is much stronger and it's much more of that elevated intensity. So for the majority of women and men, the impact on their brain is not the same at all. So just to clarify, but I think the numbers are strong and they are growing every day because of porn in your pocket, right? In our phones. Speaking to, what was the last number that you said? Because I wanted to comment on that.
So it was about 11% of men and 3% of women who admitted to be addicted.
Yes. Okay. So yes, this is really important. I don't love the word addiction. And it's for this very reason, is that most people do not resonate with it. And then when they do, they see it as a thing they can't overcome. Because
they don't realize it. They think there is no problem.
Yeah. Right. Like people who are addicted to work, they think they're good workers. Right. So like, but I would like to, I'd like to, or even people who are addicted to working out, right? They don't see that as an addiction, even though, some people work out 2 times a day and they cannot go a day without working out. So I do like to use the word compulsion, but I'll share a scale of how addiction is actually classified. So first there's use. You start using porn. Then there's misuse, which means, you should be getting ready to go to work, but you're watching porn and masturbating. Then there's abuse. You're using it too much or you're using it at times when you shouldn't be. From abuse, there's a bridge that takes people into compulsion. This is where it really gets different. And I think this is more important of a marker. Compulsion is you can't not do it because if you don't do it, you won't feel normal, which may not be good. But if you try not to watch porn, then the person goes through withdrawals. They have increased anxiety, increased depression, increased flatline, arousal dysfunction. The compulsion is the driver back to it. And basically within the brain, the dopamine levels change within the first 2 exposures. Usually, again, that's in childhood. And I call it the seeds of addiction. But once those seeds of addiction have been watered over a long time.
I wanted to ask you another question after about that. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. But after compulsion is addiction. Okay. So like full blown, you need it and you can't go without it. And the only thing I wanted to say is like, you don't have to resonate with addiction. And I think that study is important to clarify. Many people, that word doesn't hit with them, but compulsion does. And I tell people, if you want to know if you're addicted, try to stop and see what happens. Because then when they try to stop, it becomes acutely aware there is a need. And that's why I call it dopamine dependency. You're dependent on high levels of dopamine from the screen, whatever thing you go back to.
You just spoke about the fact that we were maybe born with it or not. And that was one of my questions. Is there something in the body that can make you more inclined to become compulsive consumer of this kind of content?
Yeah, there's nature, nurture, and navigation. Okay. So nature is, what we would think of as a genetic component, and I call it familial. So familial means brains don't fall far from the tree. So you will have a brain that many people, I guess I should say, will have a brain like their families. But I just want to share with you, I come from a family of 6. I've seen my family's brains, including my parents. My brain was like that many moons ago. My brain has not been like my family's brains for decades now because I've engaged in a different nurture and navigation. Nurture is the environment you're in. So if you are in that familial environment, many men, they're exposed to porn from their parents, from their dad, really. So, or their uncle. So like the environment you're in is very important too. And I want people to recognize that. The most important is navigation. And navigation is how you move through the world. And there's an analogy. I think this is really, kind of sets the stage for it, is that if 2 kids have Legos on the ground, you know how bad Legos hurt if you step on them. So the dad comes around, steps on the Legos and freaks out on both of the kids. one child internalizes that, has a not enough story going on and that he's a bad person. The other kid goes, F you type of thing to the dad. And they are convicted in, that other people, their external validation or lack of or punishment isn't going to impact them. That's navigation. So people navigate the world very differently. And, that's the example that I'm talking about with me. I've stepped away. I've been the black sheep in my family for years. They know it. I know it. It's just I've navigated the world differently. I've set up an environment with people who, have abundant thinking and want to self-actualize and become the best version. So there's a familial component, but it does not drive you. There's a whole body of epigenetics, above genetics, scientific healthcare literature that says your genes don't have to express in the way that might have happened for other family members. And I want people to know that.
That's wonderful. I think it gives a lot of hope to people who think that they're wired from, in an inexplicable way, the way they are. For those who do not understand that famous line between, we spoke about kink and then having an actual act of extreme, sexual relation. And what is the difference between hypersexuality and healthy libido?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So healthy libido really is you have a healthy sex drive toward a sexual relationship with a partner, right? So you feel sexual when it's time to feel sexual and you want to be sexual regularly. That's libido. But, and I can expand on it, but let's just jump into hypersexuality for comparing and contrasting. Contrasting is, many men that I work with, they're in the middle of work and they have a very strong sexual urge. If you're working, your sexual circuitry shouldn't be lighting up because you're in the middle of work, right? That's not a time to be sexual. That is a call for mood regulation from high levels of dopamine because your brain has been trained to do that. So many men confuse that as libido, thinking, oh, I feel sexual a lot. I have a high libido. But they do realize once they hear me, and especially once we work together, that, if you're feeling sexual and sexual fantasy, that's basically, it's called euphoric recall. It's, reels of the porn that you've watched before pop into your head, making you feel sexual. That actually, we already know if you have an urge, there's a dopamine drip associated with that. And it's leading you basically to de-stress or to overstimulate your brain. Right. So that's the difference. Libido leads you to a sexual relationship with your partner. Hypersexuality distorts that. And it takes you away from your relationship most times and to the thing that you've conditioned your brain. But like I said, many men, especially when they're trying to recover, they will try to get this dopamine fix within their relationship. And that's when things start to feel escalated for partners.
I think I think the audience will understand very clearly also what is the difference. It sounds pretty obvious, but sometimes I think that, we have so many obligations. We don't really know what's going on in us anymore because we are not used to listen to our body,
Yeah. And that's strain brain, by the way. We put ourselves all in strain brain. The screen will do it. Pornography will do it. Supernormal stimuli. But we live lives right now where we are in front of a screen all the time. And we are trying to do more than ever before. People are stressed out and exhausted in the first place. The clarity of thinking doesn't happen in that space. So that contributes for everybody. Knowing how they feel, knowing what their genuine thoughts are, that is definitely decreasing because of our environment and our culture. They say it's an attention economy, right? Everything's fighting for your attention, and it is pulling you off the path of neurological regulation, which is self-regulation.
That's where emotional maturity is very important. Yeah, absolutely. How can consuming sexual content negatively affect someone's sexuality? So here, I would like to dive with you a little more on the brain mapping, but also maybe the genital desensitization that is happening, and also the lack of emotional well-being.
Okay. So first of all, I want everybody to remember our brains are the supercomputer that run our minds and our bodies, because we will get to genital desensitization, which is a little bit different, but our brain is running the show. So let's not lose sight of that. Many people do, right? People forget. Their thoughts are coming from their brain performance pattern. I see this in QEEG. That's why I'm trying to, kind of reduce it to strain brain and drain brain. If you're in strain brain, you feel more stressed and more tired than you would if you weren't in strain brain. In the ideal or optimized brain map, it's all green on the brain map. It's a unicorn. Mine's probably the closest because I'm very regulated. And there are people out there that are very regulated. It's got a little yellow because I'm a high performer.
That's what you see on the screen.
Mm-hmm. On the screen, There's many different heads. Basically, if all of them are green, you're regulated. Strain brain, lots of red. You're using an overactive pattern. Drained brain, blue, underactive pattern. So basically, I can see this in the brain map. And the idea is if you're using an optimized brain map and brain performance pattern, you feel calm and alert and engaged. If something stressful happens, you can respond and not react.
Yes.
If you need to concentrate deeply, you can. If you want to fall asleep and stay asleep all night long, you can. I have a sleep number bed I shared with my husband. It gives you a score. I got a 98 last night. It says it's like medal worthy, and it gave me this link, and I shared it with my husband. He's like, congratulations. I'm like, no need for the congrats. But at the same time, like, it's really cool to know, like, those are like, they're projections and extensions of the regulation that I have from within. So it feels good knowing I got a restorative night's sleep because my brain will allow me to. That's the opposite of most people's experiences, right? They can't fall asleep. They can't stay asleep. Porn does that. It disrupts the sleep cycle. I've made many videos. In March, a month ago, I made a whole series of videos on sleep because it's National Sleep and Brain Awareness Month. Just letting people know if your sleep's disrupted, something's off in your brain performance pattern. So when it comes to sexual function, the way that it's impacted is that when a person's brain is in strained brain, it's too stressed and tired to become aroused. When you're in drained brain, that dopamine desensitization leads to true sexual arousal dysfunction. This is how porn and hypersexual content is contributing. It's desensitizing the dopamine receptors. You need level 20 to feel stimulated. But again, you go to be with your partner and, even if your partner is ready to have the craziest sex, she's still just a 9, not a 20, 11-point gap. When it comes to genital desensitization, that can happen from the brain in the way that I just talked about, these dysfunctional patterns. But what happens for many men is that not only is the mental stimulation very high from pornography, but it's coupled with masturbation, which is much higher physical stimulation than being with your partner. Many men, they are accustomed or they've trained their brain to really do a lot of physical stimulation. So that desensitizes the genital organ at the level of the organ in terms of like nerve desensitization. But of course, they may not have shared that with their partner. So now there's a double whammy of not being able to feel and to enjoy sexuality at a healthy level. You need lots of stimulation.
I'm guessing that using toys makes it even worse.
For men, I actually think I try not to tell anybody anything they don't know, because I do know once I say it, the hijacker in their brain, I know from experience, the hijacker in their brain goes, oh my gosh, I would try that, because no matter what, it's looking for higher level dopamine. When it comes to men, and actually I wrote about this in my book also, when it comes to men, like the sexual toys that they want to use are on their partner. So after 50 Shades of Grey came, 50 Shades Grey? Yeah, that's what it's called.
Yeah, yes.
When that, trilogy came out, there were more injuries from sex toys, than there had ever been before. And in that pocket of time, because they were being purchased to use with partners, because again, people were watching it and then people were getting injured, but the people getting injured were the women. But the sexual gratification and the dopamine was for the man. That goes back to the objectification and the allowing of the self-objectification, or even being into the self-objectification because of consuming that on sexual media, whether that be social media or so. Like sex toys, many men don't use them, like some do. The thing I was going to say, and please, if any men are listening, don't run off and do this, is that now with AI is the larger danger than sex toys, because going back to actually a comment that you made right when we started was, about men being lonely because they're getting all of this dopamine from the screen, but they're not connecting with their partner, right? The oxytocin component. Now with AI, that connection is being built in a really distorted way, right? That's why people are falling in love with their AI chats, right? It's because they are feeling really seen. And again, like partnership, like with 24 years of marriage, my husband doesn't always validate my every feeling, nor does he tell me how fantastic and smart I am. Like my chat tells me every day. I have to tell my chat, stop telling me how wonderful my ideas are, because I'm in this loop. I'm actually in a loop.
I've read that it was a good thing, actually, to bring it back, to stop doing that.
You got to stop doing it. But, so the point is like, there's delayed gratification. So I never really rounded out that thought. Instant gratification, you hit a button, you get whatever sexual thing you're looking for. That is your personal dopamine hit. Now, when we talk about AI, now there's AI chatbots that are telling you everything you want to hear that your partner doesn't tell you, right? And then you go to your partner, you've got to work for it. Your partner's got to work at this connection and this sexual intimacy piece. It's delayed gratification in a relationship, but that's how dopamine is supposed to be earned. My son and I are championing our nonprofit, which is designed for parents and for young people for more awareness, not necessarily just explicit matter, but balancing screen time. So this doesn't become an issue. This is how I'm going upstream. My 22-year-old son is running it. And I want our tagline to be earn the dopamine. And I love it. He still is weighing it, but I'm like, dude, that is just awesome. Because you need to earn dopamine. The real danger is when you stop earning it and you just click a button, even DoorDash or Amazon or, in today's day and age, you literally can hit a button and anything you want can show up on your door, between 2 and 10.
But it's not only that. You mentioned last time when we had our first conversation that the brain deteriorates, permanent damages or not permanent.
Yeah, they're semi-permanent is the way that I like to, because going back to your comment about hope, I always say it has to be pragmatic hope.
Okay.
And again, I write about this in Mind Over Explicit Matter because I've been accused of being a toxic optimist, which is like, you think everything's going to be great. I'm like, no, negative. I am not a toxic optimist. I, my friend, am a pragmatic optimist, meaning you have to do the things to get the outcome. You have to earn the dopamine. You have to delay the gratification. You've got to do the work to rewire your brain. So I call these patterns semi-permanent. There's more studies than just mine that show that structure and function, they're brain imaging studies, structure and function decrease. Dysfunction, especially in the prefrontal cortex and those reward circuits, the reward center and the reward pathways. The reward center's in the middle of the brain. The pathways feed under and forward to the prefrontal cortex where we see it most. Now, in the prefrontal cortex, those areas are designed for attention and focus, impulse control, judgment, executive function, which means planning and organization, small little steps where you get tiny dopamine hits towards a larger goal where you get a little bigger dopamine hit, but not the flood that you get from sexual content. Yes. So we're seeing dysfunction in those brain areas.
Do you think that this is affecting the well-being mainly of men to the point where their lives are falling apart and depression sets in and even suicidal thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Suicidal thoughts are known to be associated with drain brain. Depression is associated with drain brain. And these are not just my opinions, just so you know. There's a ton of science that validates this. There's books. The new-ish book from Jonathan Haidt's called The Anxious Generation. Their studies show that the trajectory of screen use and the trajectory of mental health issues is basically parallel in the negative direction of problems. This is the first time in history that the younger generation is worse off than the generation before. Oh, that's insane in my mind. And it is because of screens and it is because of sexualized content, because that is the vast reason that men are using it. And just to speak to masculinity, I'm actually kind of rebranding my YouTube channel because I focus on the problem. My whole life, I'm like problem girl telling people what not to do, And so I told you my life has been complex, but I really want to tell men like what to do. So I'm branding it more as like masculine power, reclaim your masculine power, reclaim real world desire, and absolutely get control over your brain to be able to have the work, the hobbies, and the relationships that you want. So what I was going to say is that we know too, scientifically, that less men than ever are getting in and completing college. This goes back to the brain function and the executive function not being able to do it. Less men than ever are getting viable, sustainable employment. More men than ever are staying at home living with their parents. So like, this isn't just opinion. We're seeing this everywhere. And I want men to go, whoa, porn and social media, even though it makes me feel good, this is at the core of my deepest, biggest issues. And again, I want to remind you, science shows that, but I've talked to thousands of men who now see it.
That is, those facts and numbers are really scary, especially because we realize that it's just going to be worse with time and technology. And it's like a train wreck that we can't stop. And for someone who is listening to this podcast and wants to understand what is a healthy amount of masturbation, is there a limit that we should not cross?
Yeah. So first I want to say we can stop this.
Okay.
Because you know how you're like, this is leading in a direction that we can't, that's terrible. It's leading in a direction that's terrible, but I liken it to the smoking industry. Smoking was on a huge rise. And you know what stopped it? Not people being told, or not the shutdown of smoking. Smoking's still available, right? What happened was people realized for themselves, one by one, it created this mass exodus of smoking, that smoking is addictive. They realized it. They realized it was causing lung and throat cancer. And they realize secondhand smoke is real, that it's affecting their children. So this is what I want people to know. I want you to know sexual content is addictive. That's why these algorithms do it. Attention economy. It is causing your arousal dysfunction for sure. That's the biggest pain point. If you have ED or sexual arousal issues, it's causing it. It's causing your relationship issues. It's causing your work issues. And indeed, it's affecting your children and your relationships. Then people feel empowered. They're like, I'm not going to do a thing that causes all of those things. So then when we move on to masturbation, it's not about, people always want to know how much masturbation is too much. It's not even about that. It goes back to our discussion on compulsion. So if you never consume porn, if you never got in the quote unquote habit of masturbating regularly to change your mood, a real big thing people have to realize, all these behaviors are mood regulation, primarily de-stressors, but they involve two things: dopamine dependency. You're doing it for the dopamine to change your mood. And number two, reinforcement loops. There are habitual reinforcement loops. So like when it comes to masturbation, it's not about how much, because, you know, a person who never masturbated and doesn't have this need to do it for those reasons, you know, if they masturbated 5 times this week, they wouldn't even do it because they wouldn't need to. So if you need to masturbate regularly, that is the problem. It's the need. That's what I want people to know. And so if you don't have a frequent, consistent, and especially growing intensity masturbation habit, it's not a thing for you, right? You can masturbate in a healthy way here and there. As soon as it becomes regular, frequent, consistent, and with growing intensity, you've now moved from use to misuse to abuse to compulsion to addiction. That's why I want people to know that.
Okay. I think that's going to help a lot of people. I mean, in some sort of way, there is once again still this feeling of shame. And then so we have the impression that we can't speak about it, but at the same time, we need it because it's a relief system, like you mentioned. It can be a relief even if it's not an addiction. It's just like, oh, I feel better. I wanted it. Oh, I got my orgasm. There you go. You know, it's out. So knowing that the line to be crossed is invisible is maybe harder to identify. But at the same time, I think that everybody's gut tell them, okay, right now, you're escaping something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would like people to understand, like, if you need an orgasm to shift your mood and then you start depending on that, I would rather people figure out how to shift their mood in a healthy way, get dopamine from their real life, not from sexuality by themselves. Because every time you do it, you're literally linking yourself to yourself. Like sexuality, going back to that evolutionary aspect, sex is designed, and we know this, brains attune during sex. Like, I think this is cool from an energetic standpoint that like, if you're lined up having sex in, people might think it's a vanilla way, but your brains align, your hearts align, your genitals align, your major energy centers in your brain are aligned with your partner and they're attuning. That's the special aspect of it. So if you don't do that and instead now you're by yourself, you're creating this internalized loop of, pleasure with yourself. You're basically linking yourself to yourself instead of to your partner. So like, yeah, if you do that every once in a while, no big deal because that link is informing, in a very strong way. But the more often you do it, you are linking yourself to yourself in a screen or fantasy. It's an unreality, right? So I would rather people, I have a boxing dummy. Actually I have two now, but I love to box. Like on the days where I'm like, man, I just need something to take the edge off right now. Like if I really need to, I'll go box. You feel incredible after you box. I want people to find the thing that's healthy for them in their real life that they go do. Actually, the other night I felt somebody hacked my Instagram account. So it was just, I wasn't really stressed about it because I'm regulated, but it was a busy day of constant problem solving. And I literally was going to call my husband and be like, let's go out for dinner and let's get some drinks, right? Because that's an easy way. You go out. But then I'm like, no, it's Tuesday night. Like I'm not doing that. So instead I made dinner. I poured a spritzer in a, crystal wine glass. Spritzer's just Pellegrino with a splash of cranberry, cranked up the tunes. I made white chicken chili, but like, it was like an hour of just decompressing. And I know cooking is a thing that helps me to do that. So like the next morning I woke up feeling like a rock star. I just regulated, a challenging day in a really healthy way. And now there's no guilt or shame. Now I'm empowered, and it probably led to my 98% of my sleep number tonight.
Yes, that's very true. So those decisions is not just about sexuality. It's every day. It's in everything we do during the day that we are making this conscious decisions of taking the right steps for our own regulation. I think that it's easier to digest when you realize that this is not something that applies to one situation, as if you were a medical case.
Oh, yeah. And if I can say one more thing about masturbation is that many people use it to sleep. They use it as a sleep inducer. Many men do, many women do too. And it's because like the hormone flow that happens after an orgasm, like you said, you feel better and it actually like shifts your brain into not the sleep cycle, but it suppresses your brain performance. And that's the thing that I want people to know. It's called suppression. But it can lead to insomnia. So like, again, it's like a sleep aid. If you now count on masturbation to sleep, you've just linked yourself to it as a sleep aid. Other people will use it as a booster in the morning. Some people use it as both. A thing that people are doing, and I would love for your listeners to think about this in their own life. Think about the things that you do in the day to upregulate from outside of yourself. So it might be coffee. Don't get me wrong. I love coffee. But it might be 6 cups of coffee, which I would not drink.
Exactly.
You're upregulating with caffeine. Some people upregulate with nicotine. Other people upregulate with stimulants, right?
I quit, but there you go.
Like you're upregulating to feel better in the day. And then at the end of the night, you're down regulating. Yeah. Hence the glass of wine that I wanted to go get, right? Like I'm feeling a little extra ramped up and my brain goes, I should just go out and get a couple glasses of wine and not have to cook dinner. Instant gratification, hit the button, right? And instead I'm like, no, I'm going to delay that gratification. I'm going to let the energy come down by itself. So think about what do you do to upregulate? The more things you're doing, you're not self-regulating from the inside. Yeah. And, the more things you're doing at the end of the night. And when people really step back and look at it, they realize, wow, I'm doing a lot of things.
Like I said, when I introduced this podcast, sometimes that it takes for us to hit the wall when it's too late to realize that we need to change. And it's amazing that you are out there. And I'm going to reinforce the fact that you have a YouTube channel that speaks about, and your titles are very catchy. It's straight to the point. They are going to get the information that you're promoting. And it's about healing without having to hit that wall. Because when it's too late, the damages are irreversible sometimes. So I will be linking everything in the description down below as usual. I would like to ask you, if untreated, I'm going to say it like that, what could the brain look like over time?
So, you know how I apologize, all these like aphorisms to try to help people understand. I always say there's no such thing as a horizontal spiral. That's not a thing. You're either in an upward spiral in your life or a downward spiral. I want people to know that. So the more things you do, even if you're inching upward, like you might not be, rocketing upward, but if you're inching upward, that's what I want people to do. So my point about that is that if you do consume a little pornography or you go on Instagram for a little hits of dopamine, whatever it might be, a little leads to a little more. And I see that in a person's map. I can pick up the breadcrumbs and put together what has led to higher levels of dysfunction. I also see it change and shift back. The technology that I use is like a workout for a person's brain. I'm very skilled in being able to set the protocols to address the dysfunction in a person's brain to be able to reverse it. So I want people to know that with technology, I believe we've estimated that I've seen more than 50,000 brain maps. It's probably more than that. But from the number of brain maps and people that I've worked with, when technology is involved, I don't think there's one person who can't heal from all of this, because the tech's kind of like a pacemaker. It's a wearable. You don't have to have it inserted, but it basically teaches your brain to operate at that healthy, optimized rhythm of calm focus. You don't need things from outside anymore. So if you try to use your mind and your body, you may fall short because of the level of dysfunction, but we can see it in the brain maps and the trend screens. I can watch a person's brain change and reverse and improve in real time. They see it too. I have my own app. I've partnered with the leading provider in the whole world, the software company. In my app, every single session a person does, a workout for their brain, it leaves data points so they can see their brain improving in real time. The wonders of neuroplasticity, let me say it like that, is proven to be able to help people do this at any age. I have clients in their 80s. But I want to speak to the rock bottom comment that you made, is that I have a new client. I'm going to estimate his age, just not to call him out, at 75. And the reason he called me and is now in my program is because his wife's known about this habit, quote unquote habit, that has escalated into newer behaviors across their more than 40-year marriage. And he's just one example of many people that I work with that have a similar story. His wife knows about it, hasn't had the courage to really communicate about it, or skills, honestly. Like we've talked about, many people don't have the skills or the emotional maturity or intelligence. And now they've been together more than 40 years and they're in their mid 70s and they're dealing with this. But I'm glad they're dealing with it instead of not, but I would have loved for them to deal with it decades ago.
Yeah. Tell us more about your program. Let's dive into how you help people.
So the way that I help people is, the first step is to meet with me. I offer consultations. It is a paid consultation, because if it wasn't paid, I would just be doing them all day, every day, and not really have people, people do want to talk to me about this stuff and get my take on it. It's a paid consultation, but that consultation investment is applied forward to the brain map when you decide you want to move forward. So this way we're both on the same page with that. Then you order the hardware from the manufacturer that I have partnered up with. The hardware comes right to your home. It's a wearable. You take your brain map at home. The program director on my team helps you to do that if you need it. It's very simple with prompts in the app, but we do an onboarding for anybody who needs support. One saying in my business is, there's many people on my team. We hold you. I know how difficult this is. The first step is the one you have to take for the consultation with me. It's by phone on purpose so that it feels safe to you. You don't have to look me in the eyes to tell me your story the first time. You do that on the second time in the brain map. We meet by Zoom, but we hold you through this. We know how challenging this can be for everybody involved. But once you take that first step, then you take your brain map at home. You and I get on Zoom. It's private. I connect your brain map to your life experiences, to your history. All of it is in a secure portal. Then if you want to move forward with your program, I've set the protocol for you based on your brain map and help you understand that. Then the program is a 6-month program. Most people have been dealing with this for decades or a lifetime. I made the program 6 months after, a decade and a half of figuring out what is the point where I can help the vast majority, the 99% of people, and that is 6 months. That's how long it takes to unwire, rewire, and begin to hardwire in that new optimized pattern. And again, you see it all in the data. You can see where you started, where you are on any given day, and how far away you are from the optimal pattern. After 6 months, if you need to or want to continue, you can continue in the program as long as you want to. I have some people who are in it for years because they love it. But after that, then I offer a maintenance program where I teach you to use the technology cost-free at home for the rest of your life, which is what I encourage you to do, doing infrequent short sessions to keep hardwiring the brain. But more importantly, I teach you how to interpret the data in the tech so you can always know you're staying regulated. I call my programs Regulate First is the main program. Stay Regulated is the maintenance program that springboards you into using this tech by yourself. And I've had thousands of people move through it successfully and enjoy it. Like, I don't think there's another program where you can address this, where you actually enjoy it, you actually get the outcomes that you're looking for, and you have a long-term plan to help yourself. And just one other thing, we include individualized coaching in that program. Zach Carter is the lead coach in my program. He has been for years. He's recovered from his own porn addiction. He's a counselor. There's group coaching with me. And again, my program director holds you through the whole thing.
I love it because it's science-based, but there is also a placebo effect where you can follow your own growth. And listen, I'm going to translate that to something that everybody does. I think now it's counting the steps we've made through the day, right? When I look at my app, because I forget about it, and I realize I was behind a computer most of the week, and I haven't reached not even half of my 10,000 steps sometimes, because I work from home, I feel bad. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not great. But when I see that I went through the 10,000 steps or even more, especially when I go somewhere and I visit a new town or something, I feel very proud of myself. And somehow I feel better in my body and I want to do it again and again. So I love how you're actually bringing the technology to the people. You help them understand how to read it so they can understand their own brain better.
Yeah, people love it. People joke all the time. I think I'm addicted to your program now. And I'm like, that's better than being addicted to pornography. But at the same time, I don't want you addicted to anything. But it really does become like so exciting for them because, again, like they can see the progress. And I tell men all the time, I told that gentleman who now has a major rupture in his relationship with his wife. I tell men, like, if you want to repair your relationship, I tell women, I have a program for women, so I should share that. It's called Sanity After Betrayal. I'm actually revamping it with a new program coming out on June 1st. That's called Should I Stay or Should I Go? I've redone that because that's the number one thing a woman wants to know when kind of the crap hits the fan. And I want them to know how to make a good decision because they're usually very dysregulated because of betrayal trauma at that moment. But I tell men, I tell the women to behave, to believe behaviors. But when you have all this data and you show your partner, my brain was here and now it's so much improved, plus they see your behaviors have changed, that really helps women to understand the shift that has happened so that they can let their trauma dissipate, right?
It wasn't against me. Like I'm not the cause or I am enough. That was never about me. Yes.
Yeah. The number one thing I tell women, which I know sounds slightly harsh, and, I've had to tell myself this in seasons of my life, is that, if your partner has a behavior, you are collateral damage to it. It's not about you. It's not directed at you. You are absolutely feeling all of the aftermath and you are involved in it. You can influence it. You can't control it. You feel it, but like, it doesn't have to do with you. It really has to do with the dopamine dependency and the reinforcement habit loops. But, going back to your comment about drugs or alcohol, like that's why this is so much greater devastation in relationships, because it is personalized and it does affect intimacy in the relationship. If your partner, drinks too much alcohol, of course you're concerned about them, but you're not like projecting that onto yourself, where that does happen in this case.
I think that it's also mainly because, alcohol, we know it's a way to escape reality, whereas pornography, we have the impression that this is what men want. So if you want it, that means you decide to destroy this family. You are the reason you don't love me anymore. This is not against your will.
Yeah, but I must say, like, science shows it does change a man's, I already said it, identity. It can make a man want those things. It like an alcohol compulsion doesn't make a man want to run off with, a gin and tonic, right? But when they are linking their brain to these avatars and these sexual acts, it really does. We know scientifically that it decreases a man's own self-esteem and body image, but it makes them less attracted to their partner and decreases their opinion of their partner's body. I have so many clients that say, I don't know what my problem is. My wife is smoking hot. This is the literal term I've heard 100 times or more. My wife is smoking hot. She's a 9.9, but I am not attracted to her because she is a 9.9. She's not a 20. There's still, a 10.1 gap in attraction that's been distorted. So this is the rift, and that is, that's why like many partners, they'll go out and they'll be at dinner and their man can't stop looking at every, 22-year-old waitress or server. But it's not about the person. It's about the avatar their brain has been connected to. That's what pornography does. Men are watching. I'm sure you've probably heard this before. Men are watching, people who are 18 and 20. They're not watching usually people who are like their partner. So that's where this does really, really affect relationships.
So going back to now we are going to provide a little more support for women, and about between 56 to 60% of divorces are initiated because of an issue with porn addiction. And it has such a high impact on a relationship and society. And I would like to ask you, if a woman suspects her husband that he may be dealing with porn addiction, how can she approach that conversation in a healthy and constructive way? And what steps would you recommend her to take?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. And this is what is going to be in the Should I Stay or Should I Go program that's coming out on June 1st, because I can give you the one-liner, but this is complex. This is complex stuff. First thing, I want you to know that men have developed defense mechanisms around this subject from childhood. They will use childish, less emotionally intelligent ways of trying to get out of the conversation because there is so much shame. The number one defense mechanism is DARVO, which DARVO is defend, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. They'll use justification, right? Everybody's doing it. They'll use minimization, like, oh, I only do it when I'm super stressed, or you don't want to have sex with me, right? There's a lot of manipulation that happens. So you cannot trust the conversation, which I know is the most damaging thing about this situation. You ask your man, you think you're dealing with a rational partner, right? Like you might even know, full blown no, and they will tell you it's not a thing. But it's a defense mechanism. And if your partner can tell you right away, yes, I watch porn all the time, like that will be the rare person. So generally what has to happen is the partner has to get quiet, get regulated, very difficult. That's why we help women, and be able to approach knowing that the goal is actually to get your partner on the same page as you, to go against the hijacker. So that's why I like to use the hijacker framework and think about you and your partner in a car, right? Like you thought when you got married or you met your boyfriend that you got into this car of your relationship and you're sitting next to each other, right? And you might think your man's got the steering wheel and you're sitting next to him. What you didn't realize is that there's a hijacker in the car, and the hijacker is anywhere from has one hand on the wheel, or your partner's over in the middle of that bench style. Remember that bench? I had a 1978 Chevy Malibu in 1992 or whatever it was, but that bench style car. And now the hijacker's driving the wheel. So when you ask your partner what's going on, you're probably going to have the hijacker respond to you. That's the number one thing I want you to know. So if the conversation doesn't go well, it's because of that. It's not your partner responding. It's the hijacked brain that is defending. And shame is a component. And, a lot of men know they have this habit that they can't stop. And that goes back to that idea of addiction. Very difficult for a man to go, oh my gosh, I am addicted to this. If you admit to yourself you have an addiction, you now need to take responsibility for that. And that's big. That involves professionals. That involves telling everybody what you've got going on. I've heard the phrase, I thought I was taking this to the grave, hundreds of times. Because men don't want to tell people what they have going on. So I want you to know you probably need professional help in sorting out the route, or like the route, I guess I should say it that way, like the plan, the path to take, because it is very challenging. But the goal is to get you and your partner on the same page to address the hijacker that is trying to take over the wheel of his life, which is impacting you and your relationship, which means now you actually have probably been booted to the back seat of the car.
Yes.
The more it escalates, right? And your children are impacted. Your children are in the car if you have children. That's why this is not just because a man might say, this is just a habit that I do by myself. Why do you care? Not a thing. So getting on the same page is the first step, but that's why I want women to know this is about dopamine that got linked to sexuality. It's not about you. It's not even about your relationship. Your relationship's being impacted. The thing that needs to happen is the brain has to be regulated in the man first. That's first and foremost. That's where my work comes in, because the longer it takes a man to do that, relationships break down. So like if you're thinking about getting divorced, I want you to know, like, this can be repaired, but it can't be until both partners start regulating their brains. And most people don't. So they're in this gridlock of dysfunctional relationship dynamics. And which, again, I already said, there's no horizontal spiral. They're in a downward spiral. And it's very complex. When I work with couples, I offer an intensive. It's working with me directly. You have my phone number. You can text me all day, every day. We meet frequently. When I work with couples, my goal is to get a man, and there's very savvy ways of doing it, get a man to be able to recognize, we use the word admit, but I don't love that word, recognize and then share all of the behaviors that he has going on. All of them, because if there's any secrets, it's not released from the nervous system. That's why I have to be savvy.
And I think that for some women, they can gather proof, because some men will lie unless they are facing their own realities. They can gather proofs to confront the person.
Yeah. But I don't even really want people, I call them receipts. I don't even want people to have to get receipts. I want women to learn to trust their own intuition and not need a million receipts. Of course that does. More receipts you have, you're like, yeah, this is real. This is real.
Yes.
But for most women, it was real the first time their spider senses were tingling. That's the time the conversation should happen. But this is the most difficult thing. I've put so much thought into this. Like, that's the most difficult thing. You think you're going to go have a rational conversation with your partner. It may even sound rational, and you walk away and you've just been lied to. But your partner doesn't want to lie to you. They just don't know how to move forward, because they have to recognize it's an issue, and then it's a whole thing. And that is way too scary. So that's why in that initial time, so what can women do if they know, even if it's just their intuition, but especially if they know it for sure with proof, is they have to set healthy boundaries. That boundary is, you can't control another person too. So you can try to kick them out of your bed, but so I always tell women, like, you decide you don't want to be around him until he's going to work on it. You suggest he gets into a program. You tell him to get a brain map. That's where a lot of men come to me. They're like, my wife found you. She wants me to work with you. At least get a brain map.
That's
when
a
we get the
gentle
brain
way,
map,
yeah,
the dysfunction pops
to
off the
introduce
page.
the conversation.
Pops right off the page, So, but the boundary is, no, I'm not moving forward with this relationship in its current form. I will not continue. But then women have to learn how to increase their emotional intelligence. They do. I've spent 15 years doing it. So this comes with no judgment, right? Like old me couldn't handle the things new me can, because I'm regulated and I've improved my skills. So there's a journey for women. And the way I think about it, in the words of Taylor Swift, is the woman has to clean up her side of the street. The man has to clean up his side of the street. They learn to communicate about that. They learn to be strong each and move forward in an interdependent relationship. So many people have a codependent relationship or a disengaged one. Interdependence is how you lead in a really strong way. You feel great about yourself. You don't need anybody to complete you. You understand the dynamics of your relationship. You know what you need. And, I practice this with my husband all the time. My husband will, going back to stress responses, which I also talk about in my book, my stress response inherently is flight. That's what I learned. My husband's is fight. So he'll yell at me. I don't even know what we're talking about. And he will yell at me. So, which he does not anymore, because I said to him, if you yell at me again, I will leave for a time. Doesn't mean I'm divorcing him. I won't be around you, because I'm not spending the rest of my life being yelled at. I'm not. And so we've had this conversation and he stopped yelling at me, but that's a boundary. Yeah, I'd let you yell at me for the first 20. Oh no, we've been married 24 years. So probably, the first 15 years of my life, I let you yell at me, and then I would try to soothe you and make you feel better, right? Not anymore. I'm not going to be yelled at. And then now he knows. So he has to come up with some new tools when he feels frustrated, because yelling at me isn't going to be one of them. I have to ground my feet still and make myself not flee or fawn. Fawning is like trying to make things better. Those were my two responses. And I now know that. So when he yells, I have to set the healthy boundary. You will not yell at me. If you can't lower your voice, I will leave the conversation. But that's not flight. And you know what's happened the couple times where I first started doing that? He left the room, because my new inner confidence of, this is a no, this won't be happening. He's all frustrated and he left the room. And I'm sitting there like, you go, girl. All I did was be compassionate and empathetic, communicate what I need from the relationship, and not back down. That's emotional intelligence. I know we use these words like emotional intelligence, but that's it right there.
Yes. Yes. No, it is. It is. Absolutely. Even for him to actually take a breather rather than fight, it was maybe a way to calm his nerves so he can come back. And hopefully he did.
Yeah,
come back and have a more
really
mature
cute.
conversation.
He comes back up the one time, because that happened a bunch of times. He was really cute. He comes back up and I'm like, you're not even doing anything, or something like that. You know what I mean? And he goes, do you understand how much energy it is taking me to do nothing and come back up here? I'm like, oh, that made me realize, as much as I'm fighting the flight response, or I'm trying not to do it, he was resisting the fight response, which, and then we get back on the same page. But sometimes that's it's not an event. It's a process,
Yes, it's always a process. And as we grow and life evolves, we always have to readjust to that process. And that's the beauty of life. It's in motion always. And we spoke about women, and I wanted to ask you now, before we end with the podcast, we had such an amazing moment. I wish we could spend 3 hours together, diving into that subject even deeper and deeper. But the parents, I'm worried about the parents now, because they're raising children in a generations of screen. And we spoke about how easy it is. And we even spoke about it last time, that at a very young age now, children come across content on their screen, and then it triggers something in them. And you created a foundation, right? That is dedicated to raising awareness. And I would like to ask you, what tools, what advice you have for them?
Yeah, well, the number one advice is the same one I told you about your partner, communication. Important to talk about, how to have healthy screen time. But again, recognizing, you're dealing with an underdeveloped nervous system, right? So it is also about setting, what I've always done is I do have 5 children, I set family expectations, and then it's always been as simple as if you don't use your devices in a safe and healthy way, you can't have them. They're a privilege. I would encourage parents to start a charging station when they do allow their children to have devices, and those devices go in the charging station at whatever time every night. No phones in the bedroom. That is a major hazard. When it comes to social media, prolonging that, I do think there's danger in socialization and preventing it if you don't allow your child to have a device at all, especially in like later middle school or high school. That's when social bonds are being formed by children. And it does create difficult stuff. But I know families that didn't let their kids have a phone, and then now they're social pariahs because the kids are communicating, via Snapchat and those things. But you do have to monitor it, and you have to keep talking to your kids about it, empowering them to create feeds that motivate them, not dysregulate them. Right. And starting it early and communicating about it. And every time you feel scared or you have fear about you don't want to have to talk to your kid, that's the time to do it. That's it. That's why courage is so important. And, leading by example, staying open, going back to the leading by example, that's why if you have a pornography habit, you really have to take care of it, because we know intergenerational trauma is a thing. Intergenerational dysfunctional patterns of mood regulation, familial, that's a thing, right? So you can't show up and tell your kid not to watch porn if you're watching porn all the time, right?
Because they get it on their own tablet and computer, because the algorithm is sending in that household
to their IP address.
Yes, to the IP address, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So people don't recognize that. So really clean up your side of the street, and then stay open to being your child's co-regulator for a long time, and now I love it because I've done that. And I can give you one example where my son Seamus, he was, at risk for gaming addiction, being on the games with his friends all the time. But I made him go outside and play double the amount of time he was gaming with his friends, right? And now he still does it. And he's 19 years old. So to watch all that work I put in when he was young, making him get off, and I still hear him, he'll go out there and play basketball when he's home from college. So it's about teaching them, not just preventing them. It's about giving them the discipline of being able to regulate around their screens. And then if they can't do it, that's when you step in and help them do it. You teach them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Rather than shaming them or creating an uncomfortable situation, it's being this moral support and this parent you wish you would have had.
Yep.
I want to close this podcast with everything about your work. I want to hear more about where people can reach out to you on your website, your book. Tell us more about what it contains and why it is important to read through the pages. And also, let us know if you have some speaking engagements and how active you're on your YouTube channel.
Yeah. So my website is Dr. Trish Leigh, Leigh.com. It leads to all of my socials and my YouTube channel. I'm very active on YouTube. I put out 3 videos a week in different formats, including visuals of how dopamine hijacks the brain. All the videos have a brain hack strategy. They're very pragmatic and practical, creating awareness, but also giving steps for recovery. On my website, you will see that I have programs at 3 different levels. Basically, a more do-it-yourself masterclass that does involve group coaching with me. Then my top tier program, that's neurofeedback, using the technology, and the intensives. If you really need help and if you're about to get divorced, that's a great place to work one-on-one with me. My book is an entry point. It's available everywhere. It's published through HarperCollins. It has brain hacks in it. So again, it's not just like blah, blah, blah of all the information behind it. It's okay, here's the information. And then now this is how you implement it in your life. So that's a really great first start. I get emails every day from people about how the book has helped them. I got an email the other day that someone hasn't watched porn for over 900 days because of my book. Like, just beautiful. So that's a really great starting point. I'm always on podcasts. So I'm traveling to do some live podcast and media events. I've been on other YouTube channels. I already shared that I am planning my own live presentation or workshop, but I haven't got all the specifics done, but it's time to get back to that. But if you look me up online, there's a lot of me and I'm here to help.
Thank you so much, Trish, for sitting with us today.
No
Once again, I'm beyond excited that you agreed to share your wisdom and your knowledge on 60 Minutes with a Woman. I hope that the audience gained a lot of value from it and actionable insight. And don't hesitate, please, to click on every possible link that I will write in the description down below, because you really want more of Trish. You really want to learn more. And if it's not for you, it's going to be for somebody you know. It's very present in society, and it's about time we acknowledge it. So thank you, Trish.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I really am on a mission to help people. So it counts. Thank you.